need to leave places open where they can, where the people involved can retreat. This wasn't done, and there were lots of people who were hurt. And in fact, after all of the investigations were done, it was deemed that it was a police riot. You can look it up on the internet if you don't believe me. It's the only described police riot ever to have occurred in North America. Now, when I went through the Vancouver Police Academy, there really was very little focus being given on drugs at that point. I did learn some things, however, going through there that reasonable force at that point extended to choking a drug dealer, because heroin was mostly the trade in those days, and the dealers used to carry the caps in condoms in their mouth, and if they were approached, they would swallow them. So choking a dealer was okay, and I did learn at that point that ponytails were awfully useful for restraining people. Anyway, I asked for your indulgence over some of these things. Well, after completing my training, I discovered that drug enforcement was mainly left to the discretion of individual officers. Now, you've got to remember that in our cities, I think Victoria is probably the same as is Vancouver. High-level traffickers never get investigated. And the reason for that is that such investigations are extremely expensive. You tie up years of police time, they cost millions of dollars, and most of our municipalities simply cannot afford that. This is different from the RCMP, who are paid for drug investigations and get grants to carry out this sort of thing. Anyway, there wasn't much high-level trafficker investigation going on in Vancouver. But however, those officers who focused their activities on drug enforcement did make substantial amounts of overtime out of the whole thing. And in fact, I'll tell you about one individual I worked with in my early days. And we would go around, and we'd routinely arrest individuals then on the basis of a dirty hash pipe or a spoon with enough residual heroin in it to analyze. That has since been changed. That we would not hold in court today. That's just looked as an analysis of something that's gone. And anyway, we go around various hotels, and the hotel clerks would tell us which rooms they expected the occupants of drug activities, and they'd give us the keys to just go into these places. And the sad thing, well, really, when I reflect, is because it was probably the hotel managers and staff, they were probably the biggest traffickers anyway in the world, and they certainly charged prostitutes a premium for brief hotel stays. Anyway, getting back to the police work, any policeman will tell you, if you hold them to the point that the drug they fear most is alcohol. Riots, murders, most violent crimes, defacing of property, noise complaints, unruly and threatening behavior, family assaults, all go hand in hand with alcohol abuse, as does the carnage on the highways. And at one stage, in fact, I worked in a program with a social worker where we would attend high-risk calls. If there was a concern for the safety of children, spouses, or there were lots of calls to the police, this happened, we would go around in the evening. And the drug which we always found was alcohol. We don't have marijuana, heroin, or cocaine riots. They simply don't occur. And in fact, some of you will remember that about 4 or 5 months ago in Vancouver, they had a smoke-in the Art Gallery Square. And you know what happened? Nothing, precisely. The police ignored it as they do now in Vancouver, generally speaking. And I can only imagine myself what had happened if they had a drinking in that square. Most of downtown Vancouver would have gone missing. Yes, I will admit that coke and amphetamines do occasionally result in this severe paranoia, which can cause some police problems and other problems, but those cases really are few and far between compared to the dangers presented by normally meek individuals who turn into dangerous animals under the influence of alcohol. Now, as a policeman in that area, I attended many timely drug-related deaths. Overdoses of various drugs were not uncommon, and no one really paid much attention. And it really wasn't that traumatic to a policeman, because the relatives were usually far away in northern BC or other provinces, and it was up to the RCMP up there to do the dirty work of telling the children what had happened. And it is that area where I was working around which acts as a magnet to those who have run away from home due to abuse, sexual and physical abuse, often caused by the alcoholism, often present in these northern communities, and the hopelessness. Few of them had any local support in Vancouver, and these individuals rapidly became involved in the drug culture of the area, and many died there. And frankly, it's impossible to determine, I know you'll see it on these crime shows, it's virtually impossible to determine if the drug deaths were a result of long-term abuse, mixing too many drug cocktails, or the strength of the usually heroin then being greater than expected, either by deliberation, such as we talk about as a hot cap, or accident. Whoever knew? But it was only when I moved out of this venue that it really sunk in. A one-time partner of mine, quite a long-term partner, lost his 16-year-old daughter due to a drug overdose. Unfortunately, her dealer did not monitor her slide into abuse. He did not offer her any counseling. He did not monitor the purity and strength of the drugs he supplied her. He was probably just an addict himself, dealing to support his own habit. And the outrage really is that he and thousands more are still out there and still selling their products to our children. And an irregular audience, not that you guys are irregular, but I usually ask the question, why don't we go and arrest all these scum? Well, we could go out and do that. We could arrest all of them. And you know what will happen? There'll be more fights, there'll be shootings, there'll be stabbings, because dealers fight over territorial rights. They don't sign lease agreements enforced in the High Court of British Columbia. They solve it with a gun. And tomorrow, new dealers will be out there to carry on business as usual. And you'll ask me, why aren't we arresting these people? Well, I think the best thing you can say is that every time you arrest a drug dealer, the only thing you're creating is a job opportunity for the next one in line. And I'm going to give you an example of this sort of thinking. And this happened in Surrey. There was about 5 years ago an investigation into an individual who had come to the attention of law enforcement, and he was planning on blowing up a whole city block in Surrey. And so, from the right-wing point of view, good thing he's getting rid of all of those dealers. But the argument fell apart because he was a dealer and he was doing it to blow all these other dealers up. Struck me as kind of bizarre. Anyway, raw opium increases something like 17,000% in price from the poppy fields to the addicts in North America. Coke isn't quite as profitable, and the other drugs are even less so. But anyone can rapidly rise to enjoy the lifestyle of, say, a successful surgeon or a lawyer with no educational requirements, skills, and very little work required. And the only way we can break this cycle, ensure a uniform product is on the streets, help those who request help, and monitor to some extent those who need help,